So you're back with myself and Assistant Chief Constable Neil Hutchinson for our Facebook Live this evening on antisocial behaviour. If you watched the start of that, I'm very sorry, we were just having a couple of technical issues. As I said at the beginning, we are coming to you live from Foundation Futures in Walker, so not our normal setup, and we really appreciate people sticking with us, so thank you very much. I think where we just were was we were talking about levels of antisocial behaviour and how we saw a spike during the pandemic, partially because antisocial behaviour was the category that COVID restrictions were monitored under.
Right.
Yeah. But then we also saw a spike coming out of restrictions as people sort of started to, I suppose, come out of hiding, come out of lockdown and behave normally again.
That's true. It wasn't some of the antisocial behaviour we've had reported in the last 2 years. A lot of it was about the COVID regulations, but also we saw changes in how people were living and behaving, and that resulted in some increases in some types of antisocial behaviour. And I'm not trying to suggest for that it's not still a very significant issue. It absolutely is. We still, as the police, we have reported to us about 3,500 incidents a month that we would categorise as antisocial behaviour, and obviously our partners in the council also have incidents reported to them as well through their processes, for example about noise nuisance and fly tipping and littering, which are issues that they're very focused on dealing with. And something like 23% of our communities that we survey do report that they consider antisocial behaviour to be a problem in the neighbourhood they live in. So it's a very significant issue for us, something we take very seriously.
And when we speak to the public, it is something that comes up really, really frequently, and that's understandable because, as I said at the beginning, we all experience it and it can be really frustrating. And actually, one of the things I think is that there really should be better victim support for people experiencing long-term antisocial behaviour. I think one of the things I kind of want to say up front is that it is a priority for Northumbria Police, it's a priority for my office, and actually it's a priority right across our region, for our councils, for our housing associations, for our transport providers, and as such we now have an antisocial behaviour forum. We've come together to say how are we going to best tackle this working together. But that'll take a little while to work through, and so tonight we want to talk about what's going on at the moment and what are the issues, and I'm also, I think we're all ears for good ideas, as always. And so, shall we jump straight in and talk about one of the most frustrating things that people experience a lot? And actually, Pamela from Walker, where we are tonight, has asked this question. And she's saying, I'm curious to know how the issue of motorcycle antisocial behaviour can be dealt with, as the police say they can no longer chase them as it's against the law, which I understand, as it could lead to an accident. But I think it's only a matter of time before there's an accident where a cyclist or a walker is hurt. I think it's a really good point. We know that this is something that really frustrates people. So can you talk us through what's going on?
I can, yeah. We did see an increase in reports of motorcycle-related antisocial behaviour. It's particularly in early 2020 after the COVID pandemic started, so in April, May, June time. And we also saw another quite big spike the same sort of period last year around it. The numbers of reported incidents have gone down quite a lot, which I'm pleased about, but it still happens far more often than I would like. And it is something we have been working on. Panel asked the question about chasing motorcycles. It's not quite as simple a matter as we would never do it. Each particular incident and event has to be assessed on the basis of risk. And officers have to make a decision as to whether it would be appropriate to do a pursuit for something that effectively, if it's antisocial behaviour, it's unlikely they would choose to do so because the risk would be outweighed by the level of the type of incident, and there are other ways of dealing with it. However, sometimes criminal offences are carried out using motorcycles, for example, robberies, in which case we might take a different action. But some of the tactics that we have used around this in different areas with some quite good successes. We've certainly had proactive operations running, in particular in Newcastle and in Gateshead, but in other parts of the force as well, where we've used everything from surveillance to getting people to send in their dash cam footage from taxi drivers and other motorcyclists that we've then used to identify people that are doing this by their clothing, the helmets they're wearing, the bikes they're riding. And we've taken action, we've made arrests and had successful prosecutions and convictions. We've also done problem-solving activities. For example, in Gateshead, we've been working with the garages and petrol stations around them selling petrol to underage people, to children, to discourage that, and that's been quite successful in terms of preventing that. We've also done a lot of work to identify garages and lockups that are being used and take them back into the possession of the councils, get them secured so they can't use them to store stolen motorcycles in. when they are stolen. One thing we'd really like to do, and we've been trying to progress, is identifying a location where we could set up a legitimate and lawful off-road biking.
Yeah, because there is, you know, there is a thing about this, isn't there, where I don't have a problem with people having a hobby. I think if that's your hobby, then you should be able to do it safely.
But it doesn't cause too much disturbance.
Exactly, where it's not causing disturbance and it's not dangerous for other residents.
Yeah, and there are quite a lot of legitimate motorcycle users, obviously. And what we'd like to do is identify a location, and we have been looking at a couple of places potentially for this, but we haven't been able to get anything set up just yet, where people can take their motorbikes to use off-road. But then again, there are other aspects of this where there are stolen motorcycles being used, or young people riding motorcycles that don't have a licence, aren't insured, too young, and it's dangerous what they're doing. So there's a range of different tactics that we use depending on what the situation is. But it's definitely something we take seriously. It's something the neighbour teams in those areas affected do look at and do run operations around. And we've had some pretty good success in terms of getting the reported incidents down, but there's still more to do, definitely.
You know, it is something that worries me, because I agree with the person answering that question. I think it is only a matter of time before, you know, somebody comes off one of them. It is so dangerous. And the vast majority of motorcycle users, the vast majority ride them safely, but this is an issue. And Andy's asked us a little bit of a follow-up to this, which is, you know, why can't you buy motorbikes and then that way you'd be in a better position to pursue them, because the kids at the moment, he says, are getting away with it?
It comes down again a bit to the safety elements around that, and pursuing motorcyclists. There can be significant hazards around that. What would be a tragedy if someone was to be injured or worse, killed in a police pursuit, and we have to be very, very careful about the approach and the tactics we use in order to minimise the risk to everyone involved here. So my answer to that would be there are other methods. We do use other tactics, and we've had significant success with those other tactics, so we prefer to do those. They're safer for everybody.
And some of it's volume, isn't it? So it's not like you aren't catching these people and getting them and taking their bikes off them. It's just that they are, in a way, they're easy to get hold of.
Motorbikes, there's a lot of them around, yeah, absolutely, and it's an issue that we've identified or happens in quite a lot of different neighbourhoods in our area, but it's not one that we take lightly. We appreciate that it's one of the most significant issues that concern our communities. When we do surveys, when we ask our communities about what it is that's really bothering them around antisocial behaviour, motorcycle-related incidents definitely one of the most frequently reported issues, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to move us on to the next issue, and I think it's probably best described as youth disorder, youth antisocial behaviour, and it's something that it's been a major focus for me, because I really do believe in the power of youth services. I think we need to have good quality youth services where young people have got the opportunity to go somewhere, to take up a hobby, to spend time with trusted adults and each other outside of school and home. But there isn't enough of that, and even if there was, there are still young people who take part in youth disorder. And we've got a question from Kev, who says he's dealing with ASD every single night from teenagers. What do we suggest that he does other than get his own CCTV? Because, of course, you know, when these things are reported to the police, then they're not always the number one priority, because you, of course, have to deploy to much more serious incidents where people's lives are at risk.
We have to assess every incident that gets reported to us and make determinations as to how many other incidents happening at the time and what the level of risk is. That's true. However, we do want these things to be reported to us. If you don't feel that it's the level of incident that would warrant an immediate phone call to the police, we have our digital contact mechanisms on the Northumbria Police website. There's a Tell Us Something system where you can put reports in. When we see regular and repeated reports around issues just as been described there, the local neighbour team, that is flagged up to them. They will be made aware of those reports, aware of that repeat incidents happening in a particular area or location. And what we look for them to do is effectively have a problem-solving approach. They're going to try and identify what are the causal factors here that are leading to this. And quite often, what we hear back from young people that we work with and deal with is they've got nothing else to do, there's no facilities in the area, there's no support for them. And some of the most successful projects we've had and been involved in are working with other organisations, like the one we're sitting today. And a particularly good example in Wallsend, Operation Vita, we've been working with the local authority, has reduced youth-related antisocial behaviour dramatically in that area over the course of a year and a bit now. It's had funding from your own office, for the Commissioner's office, very well supported by the local authority, and it's a joint project with police, working with youth support organisations, providing things for young people to do off the streets, in youth centres, and engaging with them when they're out and about. And it's been really effective in giving young people positive things to do at that time.
Yeah, and actually, I think some of this, we have seen an increase in this sort of behaviour in line with, and I know it's much easier for me to talk about than it is for you, in line with cuts to youth services. We have got 75% less youth provision, funding into youth provision than we did 12 years ago, and so my team are working with you to fund some of those where we can, to do really focused work with the Newcastle United Foundation and the Beacon of Light and organisations like this and other youth organisations to provide mentoring. And we're actually going so far as to divert young people directly from custody, which I think is just an incredible, very, very powerful intervention. Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of how that supports policing?
Yeah, well, we don't want to criminalise young people, and frankly, it's often not a very effective way of dealing with the issue. What we're much more interested in doing is problem solving, and working with partners, working with community groups, working with the voluntary sector. The work we're doing in our custody suite is for those occasions where young people have had to be arrested because they've been involved in a crime. We now have a programme working in our custody suites where there's coaches provided by voluntary sector organisations that engage with those young people straight away when they're brought into a police custody suite and ask them, how have you got yourself into this position? What's happening in your life? Is there anything we can do working with you and your family to support you and help prevent this kind of thing happening again? It's only been running for a short while, but I'm really positive about it. We're already seeing some very good success, a lot of really good engagement, and the police officers have really feel this is great support to them as well. Yeah,
and it is really. I mean, I saw a young person come into custody, and I knew that within the hour he would have had this intervention, and we know how successful it is. But we also know that it doesn't always work, or we can't get to every young person. And Trish has asked a specific question about antisocial behaviour in West Denton. I'm not going to put you on the spot and say, what are you doing in West Denton, because we've got a big area to cover. But I visited West Denton with the councillors last week, and the signs and the aftermath, if you like, of the antisocial behaviour, the burned down fences, the subways. It really is shocking, and I certainly wouldn't want to walk through there at night knowing that that's going on. So can you talk to residents a little bit about kind of the measures like the dispersal orders and that kind of thing that go on to try and prevent antisocial behaviour from happening in the moment?
Yeah, we have a whole wide range of tactics we can use. Dispersal orders is one where police officers can give a direction for young people that are not always young people, they often get used for adults as well, that are congregating and behaving in an antisocial, disorderly manner. We also issue community protection warnings. We issue about 30 of those a month on average in the force, and some of those escalate up to a community protection notice, where people can be given a legal order effectively to desist from their behaviour, and if they continue to do so, they can get a fine, either a fixed penalty notice or go to court. Some incidents of antisocial behaviour can become criminal offences, can lead up to criminal offences, and then we'll take appropriate action as well. So there are prosecutory measures we can take. But in every situation like this, we always ask ourselves the question about why is this happening? Why is this happening in this area? What are the causes here? What are the driving factors that are leading to this? And is there anything we can do, particularly with our partners in the council and other organisations, to reduce the likelihood of it happening again? Because at the end of the day, the local residents, the people in that area, they just want it to stop.
Yeah.
They don't want this necessarily to be prosecuting people. They just don't want that behaviour to be affecting their lives anymore. And I can completely sympathise with that. So we're always looking for what's the best way to achieve that end. Yeah. Some of the most successful programmes we've been running over the last year or two, I've talked about the one in Wall's End already, but it is this multi-agency approach, and the Southwick project.
The Sarah project, yeah,
really
absolutely
happy about
brilliant.
how that's going. There's a new one just started in the Hetton area. We've had similar projects running for a while now in Byker and in Gateshead.
So we're doing some in Byker,
Blight and Ashington. And this is where the police are working really closely together, sometimes co-located with partners in a particular area, trying to work out what the issues that are really affecting that community, engaging with that community, and developing joint approaches, joint tactics, joint methods in order to support that community, that neighbourhood, and just make it a better place for everybody.
And in those spaces, you know, that's where again we step in with the investment around youth and family services and try to pick up and put that opportunity in and do that in tandem, and we really know it works. But I would love to be able to do that across the whole area, and I suppose just in case there's any government ministers watching, I would like the money to do that, please. I'm going to take us on to kind of the last question about youth disorder before we move on to another topic. And this one's from Mark, and it is specific to Newcastle City Centre, but I suppose you could apply this in any of our kind of big urban centres. And he said, you know, the neighbourhood policing team in Newcastle City Centre are already stretched and they're struggling to deal with current issues. So what investment is being made available to resource them and to deal with antisocial behaviour and youth disorder?
Yeah, like I said, we have neighbourhood teams in every area. The city centre teams tend to be larger and better resourced, but then they're also dealing with a lot of complex issues in those areas, as you might imagine. The Newcastle City Centre team in particular works closely with the business improvement district in that area and the local authority and the licensed premises and other businesses and organisations like the Street Pastors, for example.
They're amazing.
Yeah, fantastic organisation in order to address issues that happen there. It's quite important. I mean, we've talked about youth ASB a number of times tonight, but it's really important to note that an awful lot of antisocial behaviour is not about young people. Quite often people tend to associate it as being young people issue, but it very often isn't. In fact, the majority of the incidents that get reported to us don't actually relate to young people, and they can be adult behaviours, whether it's neighbourhood disputes, drug taking, alcohol related.
Yes, of course.
And there's a whole range of factors that can come to play in any big city centre, as you might imagine. But those teams, they do have quite significant police resourcing, but most importantly, they've got quite a lot of resources to call on from other organisations, such as businesses and councils. Sometimes the most challenging issues are those that are in other areas, you know, the local neighbourhood residences that don't always have that, you know, the financial support and the organisations that can get involved to address those issues. So the real approach we try and take is, in all of our neighbourhood teams, it's about sharing good practice. So something we've been doing over the last year is doing joint training with the organisations we work with the local authorities, with business organisations, about what works, what problem-solving tactics we can use, what legal powers the police have got, but also what legal powers those organisations have got, and coming together as a group, as a team, if you like, to look at the issue as a whole and think what's the best way we as a group of people can try and address this. And we've seen some really successful projects come off the back of it.
It's really good, and I think it's also a really good time to sort of to bring in the fact that it isn't always just the police who are able to or have to respond to antisocial behaviour. It is a team effort. Often there's certain parts of antisocial behaviour which are the property of or the responsibility of councils, and sometimes it's the police and sometimes it's housing associations. And actually my view is that it shouldn't really matter who it is. The frustration for the public is they just want to be able to report it really simply, really easily, and get their problems solved. And that's definitely a focus for all of us, isn't it?
Ideally, we like the public to report to the best organisation for the issue. Whether it's noise issues, we'd encourage usually to go to the council. However, there isn't a absolute position on that, because some noise issues could be reported for the police. You know, if it's somebody driving a motorcycle up and down here and now, or it's a lot of shouting and screaming from an address next door, that could be a domestic incident that's ongoing.
Yes,
so we wouldn't
it could be something quite serious.
Exactly, we wouldn't want people to be reporting that into a council noise nuisance site when actually it's something you should be ringing the police about.
So it's funny, you've picked up my next cue when I said that it's not always just the police, and I was going to come on to talk about noise and, in a sense, neighbourhood disputes. And I think it's a really common kind of ASB, and it's something particularly that we saw increase during the pandemic, probably because a lot more people were at home and they weren't necessarily going out. And I suppose the first thing that people should try and do is resolve it themselves, if possible.
It depends on the circumstances, and again, it's a difficult one for me to advise the public around because each situation is a bit different, and you've got to make your own judgments and assessment on it. For the same reason, I wouldn't want to say don't call the police about noise, because actually sometimes noise can be a sign of something we need to know about right now. If it's a window break-in, that could be, a burglary in progress. So there isn't a hard and fast rule effectively around it, but as a general rule, if it's noise because of music or inconsiderate behaviour, it's repeatedly going on, that's for the council. We'd expect people to report that into them.
So that's what Yvonne's question's been. So she said, antisocial behaviour from neighbours, partying all night, playing loud music, it's blasting, and yet Northumbria Police are saying they can't respond unless there's fighting.
Generally, those are issues for the council who have powers around dealing with noise nuisance. It's not that it wouldn't necessarily be of any interest to the police if it is a repeat incident. What generally would happen is when we have our meetings with our council colleagues, which we do on a regular basis with the neighbour teams, they may feel that if it was a matter they wanted some police support around, they would flag it up to us and we would get involved. As a general rule, loud partying, loud music getting played, that type of noise nuisance is an issue for the council to deal with.
Okay, so report to the council, but I guess keep your ear to the ground, because we talk about this with domestic abuse all the time, which is we encourage, we want the public to be your eyes and ears and to say if there's something that they feel uncomfortable about.
Absolutely, yeah, and I don't want to give the impression that we're not interested in noise. It can paint a picture for us, and quite often we will end up working with the council and trying to address the particular issue. But there are some issues that they're better equipped to deal with than we are as the police, with the powers that they have available to them. Similar issue around fly tipping, for example. On the whole, the council is the lead agency around that, but the police will assist the council around dealing with it. Sometimes we will get involved in prosecutions, for example, if somebody's caught in the act of committing a fly tipping, that is a criminal offence. Or if the council have investigated and they think there's something else, they need to get the police involved in dealing with it, because sometimes it can happen on a, to use the term, industrial scale or a large scale.
Yes, of course, and there are, at that point, you will...
We would get involved, certainly, yeah, and we would help with an investigation and prosecution. The bottom line, I think, is to always be aware that we work really closely with your local authority, and anything you're reporting into them, if it's the right thing to do, that's the right pathway to take around that particular type of issue. It's quite often going to be the case that the local police team and the council will share that information, and we'll use it to form a bigger picture of what's happening in a particular area or issue, and sometimes we'll work together to address it.
And just to stress again, I think certainly I made it a priority, having listened to the public, that it's been a priority in various situations of previous police and crime plans, so it's on the agenda. But I think the difference this time is that now we're all around the table, aren't we? We've got the councils, everybody is determined to do something about it, and it's a difficult, when we're talking about fly tipping, it's still very different from youth disorder, but the point is it all affects people in their day-to-day.
It affects people's lives, absolutely, and it can lead on to other worse issues as well. All these types of incidents are part of a picture for us as the police, the local authorities, local businesses, local community groups, of what's happening in the neighbourhood. And I think it's a really positive step forward that we have a strategic group now, don't we, where senior partners are coming together, sharing our thoughts and our knowledge and our understanding about the issues across the whole region, because quite often these problems are mirrored in different areas and different neighbourhoods. So yeah, we've definitely been working more closely together, I think, over the last few months, in terms of getting a joined up picture around what's happening and helping us to work jointly in order to address some of these really quite embedded issues.
And I think one of the other things, we've had a question in from somebody in Win Leighton about CCTV, which makes me think of the much wider issue which we've talked about before. We talked about this when we talked about transport, actually, and women's safety on our last Facebook Live. But just that idea of feeling safe in the street, and antisocial behaviour can make people feel really unsafe. Now, the specific question that we've had was about CCTV, and the woman who's written in wants CCTV to work in Winlayton, but I think it's all connected. It's Yvonne, Wendy from Winlayton has asked a question about CCTV, but it's all connected. The appearance of things like vandalism and graffiti, antisocial behaviour on the street. Can you talk to us about how those partnerships work with things like CCTV and how that's monitored and how we all work to try and keep the public safe and make them feel safe? Because I do worry about people feeling safe.
There are cameras that are obviously owned by local authorities and the police, and that footage is shared, and the CCTV control rooms that are operated by the councils have direct links into the police, and if they see incidents happening, for example somebody carrying out graffiti there and then, they'll call it straight into us, and we'll deploy officers to deal with it. Another really useful tool, however, is that lots of people these days have their own privately owned CCTV, not just businesses but households as well.
And the ring doorbells and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a very, very useful tool for us as an investigation tool for the police. We routinely use privately owned CCTV in investigations to support prosecutions where necessary. So yeah, I certainly would encourage people to get equipment. There's some very good equipment available these days that takes high quality footage. It's a very good evidential value, and it comes in useful to us on a daily basis.
Yeah, and Wendy, we'll pick up the issue specifically in Winlayton, and we'll get in touch and see what can be done about that. We've got a question from Rosalind, who's that side of the river again, so Wrighton and Crawcrook, and she said there's been numerous problems in Wrighton and Crawcrook where houses and businesses are having their windows targeted, stones thrown at them, and in some cases they're being broken. Not only is it costly, but it's extremely upsetting, and would appreciate any update of any action that's being taken to find and punish the individuals. Is there any dialogue with local schools? Has anyone been recognised as being responsible? And if not, what action is being taken to target these individuals? I think one of the things that I want to mention at this point is the vast amount of work actually that goes on in schools, and certainly we have an education team through the Violence Reduction Unit where we've got specialists going into schools, and they're talking about everything from antisocial behaviour to violent crime to domestic abuse. And all of that is designed to try and help young people understand the risks of their own behaviour, but also to help them to report and give intelligence to the police if and when they need to. So there is work going on in schools more broadly, but do we have targeted work in where there's areas where there's a real problem?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not familiar with that particular case, although...
No, specific cases are really difficult for this evening, but I suppose
but in terms of what we can do, so yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know whether it's school children who've been involved in this particular activity. Deliberately breaking windows is, of course, criminal. We wouldn't describe that as antisocial behaviour, we'd report that as criminal damage, and it would be dealt with as an offence. But if we have in a particular area, if we have concerns around behaviour in a particular school, then we have a team of staff, in fact that works through your own office, that go into schools, but they're not just about going in to intervene in particular year groups or schools where we think there's an issue. They actually go into quite a wide range of different schools around the region. Absolutely. Just doing that educational work with young people around quite a wide range of different issues, keeping themselves safe. Some of the concerns that you might have these days around being safe online, for example, around drugs, all these kind of issues. So there's a whole wide range of issues that they conduct intervention activity around. And it's effectively education, it's about prevention, it's about that early intervention, encouraging young people sometimes to think about the consequences of their actions and what they're doing, but in many occasions just to think about how to stay safe themselves when they're out and about. I think it's extremely positive work, and I know they in the last year they've engaged many thousands of young people.
And Rosalind, she has asked about, I suppose, investigating these years, so where we've got spates of it. So obviously, as discussed, it's too difficult to say, Neil, what are you doing about Crawcrook and Wrighton? I think that's a very difficult question for here and now. But where there's a spate of something like vandalism and that kind of thing, do you investigate?
Yeah, absolutely. The neighbourhood team would pick that up effectively, because we're investigating that as an individual separate cases is unlikely to be very successful, a single window being broken. But if you see it as a pattern, and the neighbourhood teams do pick up on that, they have data that's available to them to show in their sector what crimes have happened over the last week, month, year. They can start to see patterns, and when there's repeat incidents like that, they're expected to, part of their role is to try to identify why it's happening, who's carrying it out, and what can be done to prevent it.
We've talked quite a lot, I'm going to move us on a little bit now, we've talked quite a lot about antisocial behaviour that affects all of us when we're at home or when we're maybe walking around our neighbourhood, but one of the other areas where we do get, and people do experience antisocial behaviour, is on the roads. Yeah. And Craig has asked, please can you tell me what's being done regarding mainly young drivers racing around the car park near South Beach along towards Seaton Sluice with no notice of the 40-mile-an-hour limit. Can you make an effort to enforce the limit by mobile or fixed cameras? So again, quite a specific area, but I know that this is something that happens.
Very significant issue.
Various different areas.
Yeah.
Definitely in Gateshead, definitely a lot of our coastline. There's some real hotspots, isn't there? Yeah. And I think it's important to say at this point, actually the fixed cameras, they're not the police.
No, they're not. No, we don't operate them, although we have some involvement in providing the training if you receive a penalty notice. But we do have mobile cameras, so we have vans that we put out that you'll have seen on the roads. They're very effective, but we also have our motor patrols team. That's an extremely proactive unit actually within the force, and Operation De Bruyne that's a part of that. And this is exactly the kind of issue that they address, that they're interested in looking into. Sometimes they will engage with the drivers to talk to them about their behaviour and the safety and the issues and the danger of what they're doing. Other times they'll just be actively prosecuting. It depends on the circumstance and the particular issue in that area, but I do know they've run a number of operations around exactly this type of issue in the past, and it's precisely the sort of thing that they deal with every week.
And what happens? So I know you've said sometimes they go straight for a prosecution, but what happens to, because Craig's pointed out that it's mainly young drivers. It's a bit of a trend, isn't it, to have like a trendy car and to I don't know what you would have said boy races. That's probably really inappropriate now, but it's a bit of a trend. What kind of interventions can be made?
There's a lot of different tactics. One would be for the driving offences that are being carried out, whether it's speeding or dangerous or inconsiderate driving, driving someone who's not in proper insurance in place. Those sort of road traffic offences, which our motor patrols units are absolute experts in. That's really their bread and butter. But other times it could be physical actions such as changing the layout of the road, which they've worked with the council around in terms of making it harder. Or if it's a privately owned car park, for example, at a shopping centre, working with the business owners around what we could do to make it a harder place for people to do that sort of behaviour. And sometimes it's going and engaging with those people with their cars to say, look, have you thought about the consequences of your actions here? Have you thought about the effect you're having on the local community? And discouraging it and just working with them and trying to get them to change the behaviour. Yeah. Sometimes that's the most effective method, actually. Yeah,
just a conversation about the realities of what they're doing.
Sure. And it's absolutely something the police take seriously. Road traffic and road safety is a key issue for us. It's a very important part of what we do as an organisation. As I say, we've got a dedicated team that work on these kind of issues. So incidents of that nature do report them to us. Our digital reporting method is often one of the best ways of doing so. It helps us to build a picture where things are happening regularly in a particular car park or a particular road or an area. And then I can assure you that that's the sort of thing that our dedicated, our specialist team will get tasked into looking at and dealing with.
And if this is something that, so not necessarily this specific issue, but, speeding in local areas and it's really causing you a problem, how do the public, because I know that you're probably going to mention community speed watch, or if you're not, I'm going to, but how does somebody get a speed camera? So what do you do to alert the police to the fact that this is a continual problem and it needs sorting?
We engage with local councillors around this sort of issue. So local councillors do report into us when they've got concerns around particular streets. So often the best method you've got is actually to contact your local councillor and say, I'm really concerned about the behaviour that's on the street. what we do when we're identifying where to put, for example, our mobile speed cameras, our speed camera vans, is we look at where incidents have happened, where collisions have happened in a recent period, but also we look at those community reports. And we do,
Right.
that does play a part in our decision making around where we deploy our camera vans, where we deploy our motor patrols units, and the activity we undertake.
So it's all about building that picture.
Absolutely.
And actually, that's for everything, isn't it? Reporting. Even if there's not an immediate police response, it all helps to build that picture.
Absolutely, yeah. People shouldn't always expect, because they contact the police either by the phone or digital means, that they'll immediately see a police car on their street. That's not necessarily going to be the case. But it doesn't mean we haven't picked up anything. It doesn't mean we don't put that information in, that it paints a picture for us. Again, our local neighbour teams could be the appropriate unit to contact about an issue like that of speeding or driving dangerously in a particular area, and they can again feed it in through the force processes into our motor patrol units, and we make our tasking decisions off the basis of this information.
Yeah. Look, I know you and me could talk about this all night, and I'm sure that people could ask us questions all night, and there are huge frustrations with antisocial behaviour in particular, and we will continue with a relentless focus on it. We'll continue to work with local authorities and other organisations to make sure that we're all focused on trying to prevent it and trying to improve things for people in their neighbourhoods. But I think Mark actually has asked us on Facebook Live the perfect final question, and I think it'll be one that's a bit of a relief to you, Neil. So Mark's asked, look, there are a lot of expectations on the police, and understandably so. We all know that you're under-resourced. It's very difficult to get to every incident. But what is the ask of the general public? How can the general public help?
I think it is keeping us informed about the issues in your community. A really important role for the police is to understand what's happening in our communities.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of different methods we can use to do that. But keeping us informed, keeping that intelligence flow in, whether it's by picking up the phone, contacting us digitally, speaking to your local neighbourhood team, that's really important.
Yeah.
And also, we just encourage people to, be good neighbours. Think about the people that live around you. Think about the people in your own street, and I'm sure Mark does. But anybody that is listening to this and picking up on it, we like communities, obviously, that don't need our assistance. The ideal situation for us as the police is that people don't need to call on us. And sometimes, actually, the most effective thing that the communities do to support us is the work that happens through voluntary groups and members of the community just assisting in their own areas, in their own streets.
Yeah.
So, a place like we're sitting in today, Foundation Futures, will be charities and voluntary groups set these places up and operate them, but they're often very reliant on volunteers and people that will step in and help in their own communities and neighbourhoods. And we're extremely grateful for the support those people provide in their communities. It makes such a difference to us and everybody who lives in this area.
Yeah, I would absolutely second that. There's a lot of people working really, really hard to make their area a better place, whether it be through neighbourhood watch schemes that are directly related to policing, or through just trying to keep it clean and tidy, or work with young people. And so we always want to say thank you to them. And I think with that, thank you to everybody who has joined us this evening. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to Neil for letting us grill you once again. We really do appreciate it. And we will be back with another Facebook Live in the very near future. If you've got suggestions on a topic that you would like to see covered, then please do let us know. And the other thing just to remember is that if you didn't get a chance to ask your question and you're not watching this live, you can still ask it in the chat function, and the office or myself will get back to you as best we can. So thanks again, and have a really good night. And thanks again to Foundation Futures for letting us use their brilliant facility.